right. See right there. Nice. 806, 10, there you go. Two my piston rings. And that's about it. So here we go. It's number 836. It's pretty impressive. Awesome. So that's how it's going to get. Well, the KLX is now a KLX 351. Alright, we are on our second break-in ride, fourth heat cycle, the KLX 351 now, and just taking it through its paces, and yeah, that's nice. So after the last ride, after all the shit I was talking about, whatever, I had a few photo gigs and had a little extra spare change laying around and decided to go finally with the upgrade to the Bill Blue 351 big bore kit. And took a couple weeks between the time I ordered it and it arrived. And while I was waiting for the new cylinder and piston and all that to come, I tore the KLX down and just basically prepped it a little bit each night for the big bore kit. So gaskets and scraped all that down, cleaned everything up, moved things around that needed to be moved around, like the wiring harness that was on the kind of in the way of the carb before I got that moved, and so yesterday the cylinder and piston came from Bill Blue. A day late because of my fault. It has to be signed for, and no one was home to sign. So it didn't take long. It took a couple days to ship, and he's got a lot of orders. I believe mine is number 836 stamped on the side. So I'm the 836th recipient of the Bill Blue big bore kit, I guess. So first off, am I satisfied with the product? Yes. This is a different bike now. If you may have seen in my other videos, I put a 15 tooth on this, and it comes stock with a 14. And I also have a 13 tooth that I mess around with. And I really like the 15 tooth because I don't want my bike revving out too high on highway speeds, because everywhere here in Florida is highway speeds. Even your regular old roads, people are doing, they're trying to pass you. Like right now, I'm in a park and this guy's probably going to get up on my ass and be a douchebag, but I'm constantly hitting 70, and so 15 tooth was necessary, but the power from the KLX 250, it just didn't have enough to pull the 15 tooth very efficiently. It did fine, but like if you were going up to 70 miles an hour, or even 60 miles an hour, you'd have to get there in fifth gear and then place it in sixth and then kind of, it didn't pull in sixth gear, that's for sure. And that's the biggest thing I noticed with this so far, is that I can put this thing in sixth gear and roll the throttle on, and it pulls pretty good, better than it ever has. And on that note, I hear things being stressed that have never been stressed before on this bike. Like, for instance, you could feel the chain, and you could feel the bearings, and you could feel the bike kind of twist under the load because there's the load, whereas the 250 there wasn't really any power. So it's pretty neat. Sixth gear, this thing pulls easily, all the way through the RPM range. I'm in sixth right now, probably. I'm going too slow, but if I was going from 30 up to 60, it'd be no problem. What I did do last night is I ordered the upgrade clutch springs from Barnett that someone had posted on another YouTube video to replace 3 of my springs and with these KTM 950 springs. And I'm going to give that a shot. It's not terrible. I just feel like if I really get on this, and I can feel a little bit of slipping, so I'm going to get ahead of it. I also made the really big mistake of running synthetic in this bike. A couple oil changes ago, I started putting Mobil 1 in it to keep the top end noise down, and it's going to sound weird because I never heard of it before, but and I wasn't trying to fix this, but my bike shifted funny, for the lack of a better term. It just, sometimes it would hit like neutral between second and third, or third and fourth, and it was inconsistent, and it was kind of like, it didn't feel good when it shifted. And once I started putting that Mobil 1 in, like the first minute I rode it, all that went away. So I was kind of hooked on it because it just felt better shifting and not hitting neutrals anymore. But it's terrible for a clutch on a dirt bike. It's just too slippery, and you can't break in a bike with it. So, morning. So I removed all the synthetic, and I've got good old Pennzoil in here now, and it's slipping a little bit. So could have ruined the clutch plates by having synthetic on them. So we'll see. Well, I'll try the springs out, and if the springs don't work as good as I think they're going to work, then I'm going to have to change out the friction. And then at that point, with this many miles on the bike, 14,000 miles, I'm going to change the whole clutch, just frictions and metals all around, and start anew. But I have a good feeling about the Barnett upgraded springs. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start taking it more easy on this bike. It's getting old. It's got 14,000 miles. The bike is what it is. I've upgraded it into oblivion, and I'm just hoping to get some time out of it. And if I don't, then it's going to be a new bike time. But it is what it is. So I'm really afraid that I've messed with the reliability factor of the bike. Even after I've read posts on ADV Rider and things like that, where guys are getting hundreds of thousands of kilometers or miles out of these things and out of the big bore kits, but I've noticed immediately the bike's running hotter than it usually did. And like right now, it's actually running pretty good, but yesterday it was running hot. I don't know if it was because it was hot out or it was just breaking in, but all the tolerance is tighter. But we'll see. Once I get a few hundred miles on this thing, we'll see how it goes. But what I was thinking is putting some less aggressive tires on this thing. I was thinking about getting some 605s instead of the D606s because, one, they're $30 a piece versus $100, and I guess they'll last longer. But at the same time, I tend to beat the living shit out of this bike because I have the traction. So we'll see. The KLX 351 kit, I should have did that first. You never know what to do. Definitely, if I would have got this as the first upgrade, maybe the second after a pipe, I would have been much happier. I can't believe I waited till now. probably over 4,000 miles I put this thing, on this thing as a 250. So as far as rebuilding the KLX, I mean, it's as easy as it gets. You don't even have to take a lot apart. All I did was take the gas tank and seat off, and the radiator fan, carb, and it slid right in. It was no problem. So I think anybody can do it. Morning. Bike seems to be running cooler than it was yesterday, so that's good. That had me a little bit worried. No temp light or anything came on, but the cooling fan was coming on a little bit more, and just hot. Coolant went into my overflow tank for the first time ever. The coolant tank on this thing was non-existent for a while. It was like dry rotted, cracked, and so I replaced it and put a brand new coolant tank on the back of this thing, overflow tank, and I never see coolant in it until yesterday. And your mind starts to wander a little bit when you just do a rebuild. You hear a little tick or a noise, and something's a little bit different, and you start to second guess your abilities. But so far so good. There's no water in the oil, and nothing's leaking. Bike seems to be running just fine, and I think it was just hot yesterday. It's breaking in. Putting the piston in the cylinder was tight. I mean, the piston ring clearances were fine, but the piston it's as tight as it gets. I mean, it took a lot of finagling to get that in there. I almost wanted to measure the thing and see maybe if I needed to send the cylinder back, go a thousandth of an inch bigger or something, because I was having a lot of trouble getting the piston in, more so than I've ever had before with any other bike. So it was definitely tight. Turning it over with my hand a couple times before I put the head on, it was snug for sure. There was nothing scratching. It wasn't out of the ordinary, but it was definitely on the tight side of the tolerances that you could usually have for these things. So I'm sure that's what it did. It's the cross stitching is doing its thing right now and burning up the seat and the piston rings. So sure, it's okay. Feels good now. Another thing I did was when I was initial break-in heat cycles yesterday, I took my quiet core piece out of my exhaust and it ran good. That was mainly for heat, because when I put this quiet core exhaust thing in, it restricts the exhaust a little bit, and I noticed it gets a little warmer than it normally does. But I put it back in. I really can't stand the way this thing sounds without it. So right now I feel like I'm riding, I don't know, it's just not obnoxiously loud. So that's good. But this thing definitely, it's a chugger now. It just cranks through. And it didn't do that before. You had to be in the right gear at the right time. And again, reminder, I have that 15 tooth on, so this thing's high geared. And I mean, I could definitely get away with putting a smaller back sprocket in. I could probably go from a 42 to a 40, or maybe even lower if they have one for this bike, and it'll be just fine. This thing is got so much more torque. The video doesn't do it justice. I'm just rambling on while I'm doing it, but it's really good. I'm trying to get some pressure behind the piston rings. You don't want to stay at a constant when you're breaking these things in. You don't want to let them idle forever. You got to get some pressure, you know, underneath these piston rings or behind them, so that they push against the cylinder walls and kind of work against that cross hatching to break these piston rings in. And I think it's doing nicely. I think we got a good couple heat cycles, and if something was wrong, it should already happen by now. I mean, let me see how many miles I got on this thing. It looks like 11 since the rebuild. So I think everybody has a differing opinion on break-in times. I feel like a few rides will be good. As long as you're not bouncing off the rev limiter. Just taking it easy. But, you know, giving it some torque. Get some pressure in there. Such a different bike. Unbelievable how different this is. This is what they should have did from the start. Like I'm actually impressed that Kawasaki doesn't have a KLX 300. Like that would probably be fine. I mean, with this is a different bike than it was. You know, looking back, I can't believe I stuck with the 250 as long as I did. But then there's the reliability factor, and, you know, and wearing parts out. You know, this is gonna be harder on my chain and sprockets, and it's gonna be harder on my tire, rear tire. Definitely different. But I do thoroughly enjoy having my 15-tooth front sprocket on. So that is nice. But yeah, getting back to it. It is a beautiful thing.